Hey, thanks for joining. I'm Corey from Blue Falcon Board Gaming. For those who may be new, I'm a United States Marine Corps vet, and I started Blue Falcon Board Gaming Group in the Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky tri-state area. My goal of the group is to promote board games as a way for others to improve their mental health, as well as to make board games more accessible in the community by hosting and co-hosting board game events that are open to everyone. I'll be doing a free demo of the Disney Sorcerer Arena Epic Alliances with the Turning the Tide expansion. So this is the new expansion, and that's going to be at the boardroom in South Charleston, and that's Sunday, August 28th, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. So if you're in the area, come on by. I'm really excited today. I'm interviewing Sean Fletcher, aka Fletch. Fletch is the senior game designer at the Op, and he's the designer of Disney Sorcerer Arena Epic Alliances, as well as its expansions Turning the Tides and also Thrills and Chills. So, Fletch, welcome.
How are you?
Good. So, can we start out with you kind of giving us your story? So, not necessarily what you do board gaming wise, but just who you are as a person.
Sure. My name is Fletch. I'm currently living in Southern California, where I work for the Op. I came down here about a little over 4 years ago. I'd spent 12 or 13 years in Seattle as a graphic designer and game designer. Up there, I had done about a 6 month contract with Wizards of the Coast, working on Shadowmoor for Magic: The Gathering. If you're familiar with Magic, that was like 15 years ago, so that's really old Magic. And then after that, I was a graphic designer, freelance graphic designer for a few years. Landed at a studio called Forest Prozan Creative, where they did graphic design for board games, and they invented stuff for other publishers. So they moved me from the graphic design seat over to the game invention seat, because as many game designers as there are in Seattle, we're still tougher to find than graphic designers. And so they moved me into the game design seat, and I did that for about 7 years with them. And then transferred from there down to Southern California to the Op, where I've been a game designer full time for almost 4.5 years. But prior to all of that, I've lived all over the place. I grew up in Connecticut, moved to New Hampshire for a few years, went to school in Rochester, New York at RIT, where I got my graphic design degree. Um, yeah, just generally kind of going where I needed to be to do what I wanted to do, and made my way to Southern California, where I live with my wife and our son.
Very nice. So, what got you into playing board games in general? What was kind of your kicked off point? You said that you were working on some magic sets. That's actually kind of what got me into board
Oh,
gaming. So,
cool.
I'd worked at it was a drop in shelter for individuals experiencing homelessness. And there was like this one group of younger guys, and it's like they never wanted to really interact with anything. We would kind of host some movie nights, or not movie nights, but host some movie events during the day, and we'd have some Scrabble and stuff like that going. But they always just kind of hung out in the corner by themselves. One day I saw them playing Magic though, so I went over there, and that was like the most they'd ever talked to me. They were kind of explaining the cards, so I was like, oh, if I learn to play Magic, I can get in with these guys and try to help them access
Yeah.
resources that they may need or anything like that. So Magic was like my kickoff into that, because then the more I watched videos about Magic and stuff like that, I got turned on to kind of Board Game Arena, the Dice Tower, stuff
Hmm.
like that, and I was like, oh, there's cool games
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. Like, it's not just Monopoly and
No.
Life and stuff like that, like I grew up with. So, what kind of got you into it?
Oh boy, I could go way back and tell you about my grandmother, who got me into playing Scrabble and checkers, by beating me mercilessly at both games many times, and then encouraging me to practice to get better at them. Um, I would say when I was 13 or 14, I got into Hero Quest. I was there for the
Hmm.
original launch of Hero Quest back in 1990, if I can age myself a little bit there. Um, but friends of mine and I would play Hero Quest, and we'd get bored with the actual content in the box. So we'd start designing our own characters and our own monsters and our own scenarios and storylines. And that kind of got me into the mindset that board games, while great to play as presented, offered a lot of creative space to explore by modding them and just coming up with new ways to play them. Magic the Gathering hit in 93 or 94 for me. And I played that all through high school, played some D&D in high school, took Magic with me through college where I didn't have access to a ton of board games in the dorms. But once I moved off campus and found some game shops, I really started getting back into Euro games and board games in general. So I learned, there's a place in Rochester, New York called Baldo's Armory. It's been around forever, and it's a tiny little hole in the wall place, but it was the home away from my apartment for me back in my college days. And I learned Carcassonne, and I learned Catan, and I learned so many other games that I can't even remember the names of now. Um, but that kind of got me into the mindset again of finding games that I enjoyed and then kind of deconstructing them and picking apart why is it that I enjoy this or enjoy that, or what don't I like about this other game that I could find a way to patch with some new design to fit in there. Um, and that's always kind of been sort of a background noise for me for all of the times that I haven't been designing professionally. I was a graphic designer when I moved to New Hampshire and started going on message boards and talking to some of the designers of Magic the Gathering. And that got me a contract gig doing Shadowmoor. And then I moved out to Seattle to work on that and went back to being a graphic designer when the contract was up, but kept trying to find my way back into board games. Um, so yeah, it's kind of been a through line for me since I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah, I remember staying the night with my granny and stuff like that in the summertime or anything, and we'd always play Chinese checkers,
Mm-hmm.
rummy. I have a very distinct memory of her. She passed a few years ago, and one of my I kind of went through and was making a list of things that I remembered about her, like what if I see it, that's Granny. Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
One of them was the little strawberry candies that
Oh yeah,
everyone, like, nobody likes it, but everyone still eats it at
they
your
don't
grandma's
taste
house.
like
Like,
strawberries.
yeah. But one of them was, rummy. And I remember one time there was a bunch of us that were playing. I was probably 12, maybe. And they were dealing everything out. And she got her hand and she just, just belly laughed, chuckled. And she was just like, rummy. Like, and she had everything right off the draw. And it was just, I've got a lot of good memories with her, just with Chinese checkers, Scrabble, a bunch of horror movies, stuff like that. She got me into Nightmare on Elm Street, and that was kind of ironic because she lived on Elm Street. So, like, as a child, that's terrifying to watch Nightmare on Elm Street while on
It's
Elm
happening
Street.
here.
Yeah, yeah. She'd hide in the closet, and whenever I'd go to the bathroom or something, she'd hide in the hallway closet and jump out and scare me and stuff. So she was a hoot.
You had a cool grandma.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you had you'd mentioned working for a few different companies and
Yeah.
stuff before you got to the op. What other games have you designed or worked on or provided content for?
Oh, the big one that people generally know is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. I
Okay.
led the team that created the engine for that when I was up in Seattle, and that really opened the door for me to the op because the studio I was working for, again, we didn't publish our own games. We would invent games for other studios or invent a game and license the engine out to somebody. And I built a cooperative deck building game that was meant to be sort of my first deck builder. And USAopoly signed the licensing rights on it and signed the Harry Potter licensing rights as well. Put the two together, and the result was Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. Cami Mandel and another designer, Andrew Wolf, who's no longer with the op. He's at Pokemon now, of all places. I moved from Seattle to come down here. He moved back up to Seattle. Um, so yeah, Hogwarts Battle is the big one that most people know. I've done a bunch of other games. Pat Marino and I, Pat's my boss at the op, we designed Die Hard, the Nakatomi Heist, which gets pulled out at Christmas every year because, it's a Christmas movie game. I did, you mentioned horror movies. I did Evil Below, which is a cooperative game where Pennywise is moving around Derry and the seven kids are trying to uh, build up their courage to fight Pennywise and prevent him from kidnapping the children. We're not. He doesn't quite eat them, but he gets the children from town, and we can
Right.
rescue them. What else? I did a block stacking game called Wonky that's published by, or was published by the Op. It's been out of print for a little while, but basically the idea is that there's 9 blocks, 3 big, 3 little, 3 medium, 3 different colors each, and every block has a flat side and a round side opposite each other. So no matter how you stack these things, it just wobbles and shimmies, and it never stands up straight. And the goal is to use cards played from your hand to make your opponents have to stack blocks after you've made the tower awful. And it's sort of a take that, but there's always the chance they're going to play a card that throws it back at you. So just when you thought you made the worst possible tower, now you're stuck having to put something on top of that too.
Right. So it's one of those you don't want to put yourself in a bad position either, but you're
It,
still trying to put
it's
them in a bad position.
exactly. It's always very risky, and it always happens to me. As soon as I put like block number 6 on there, and I'm like, "There's no way you're getting to 7." Reverse back at me. I got to put 7 on.
Nice. So for the Disney Sorcerer Arena, what
Yeah.
would be kind of your elevator pitch that may catch the attention of both non-gamers and gamers?
So this is a Disney Pixar battle royale, and I know it says that on the box, but it really is what it is. You get to pick 3 characters from the roster we present you with. You can build your team any way you want, so you can have heroes and villains together. You put your heroes in the arena, or your characters in the arena, and you just go head to head with your opponent to see who can score the most points for knockouts and for holding on to victory point spaces.
Nice. Yeah, one of the things I really enjoy with it is the chapter system that you guys put into it. It kind of it's like chapter one's like here's super basic, and
Hmm.
then you just kind of build on that. So it's really open to a bunch of different age groups. I did the demo for the base game. We went on vacation in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, and it was the weekend that the demo was going on. So I found a game shop down there. It was Bear's Lairs. It was in Havelock, so it was about a 35-minute drive from my vacation spot. And it went, and one of the store employees played it, but then the store owner, he called his wife, and they brought their 2 kids and then 2 of their friends, and they were maybe 6 to 9 years old in the group, 5 to 9 years old. So like I was able to help scale it down,
Yeah,
and they had a blast. I mean, they were all over the place.
that's awesome. That's great to hear.
It's kind of hard getting 4 girls that are 5 to 9 maybe super excited and to like focus on a game.
Oh yeah,
So it
I
took a little bit longer, but
I
they had
I
an absolute blast with it.
I run my son's Cub Scout den, so I know exactly what it's like to get like a room full of kids between the ages of 5 and 8, all to try to focus.
Yeah, to sit and focus, especially because there was other games going on and stuff. So like they were just all over the place, but
Yeah,
they had a blast. Every card that they drew, they would draw a card and be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is great," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool." like, yeah, we could do this and this and this, and some of them were really getting it though.
yeah.
The oldest of the 4, they were about to win, and I'm like, and I was helping them read the cards and stuff, and she was like, I was like, you could do this and that, put you guys at 27 because they were tied 26 to 26. I
Hmm.
mean, they'd went into overtime. They had an additional round, so I was like, this will put you at 28 or whatever it needed to be, and you guys are done because after the end of your turn, like that's it. Everything's done. Final scores are calculated. And she's like, yeah, but if I do it this way,
I get
I can
even
get
more.
like 6 points instead of 1 point. I was like, I didn't
There
even
you
see
go.
that.
You get it
That's
now. Yeah, and that's something that we really want to make sure we're building into our hobby games these days, especially IP based hobby games, is that accessibility. That the idea that when you've got an IP based game, uh, Harry Potter or Disney or Star Wars, whatever your IP is, um, you want to make sure that fans of that IP that aren't necessarily veteran gamers have an entry point where they can get into that game and go, okay, I get it. Let's see what's next. But you also want to make sure that the really experienced gamers are getting an end experience that appeals to them and gives them something to really think about and dive into strategically. So really, that's one of the things that I'm most proud of with Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances is that I feel like we did a really good job of pacing those chapters to give you a good on ramp into learning the game, and that by the time you get to chapters 3 and 4, you've built up enough experience that you can really play some nice strategic games there.
Mhm. So it's based on the mobile game. How did you guys go kind of approach taking it from a mobile game to a tabletop game, keeping kind of the same feel or essence, but also making it feel like it's its own thing?
They actually approached us. The Disney Interactive team met with us at a Disney summit where all the different companies that license Disney for different kinds of products all get together, and they find out about new Disney stuff happening, and lots and lots of connecting this to that, and finding good partnerships. And at one of those meetings, the Disney Interactive team came to us and said, "Hey, we've got this new mobile game that we're working on, and we think it might be a really cool concept for a tabletop game." And so we listened and we said, "Yeah, we think we could absolutely do something with that." And I'm kind of the resident Disney nerd on staff among the game designers at the op. And so they kind of handed it to me and said, "Play the app, give us some ideas of how you might execute this, and kind of give us the vision." So I played the mobile game, and I thought about how it's a battle royale in its own right. You same story. You pick your team of Disney heroes and villains and Pixar characters. You put them in the arena, and you're fighting against either the computer or another human pilot of a team. Um, and I looked at it for things that I really liked. I looked at it for things that I felt I could improve upon, and that's when kind of the game designer in me really started looking for parallels in tabletop games. It's one thing to look at the mobile game and say this is what I like about the mobile game, but then you've got to figure out what the connection is to what's the analog in a tabletop game. And so I started looking at games like uh, Smash Up and Unmatched and even Gloomhaven and Magic the Gathering for inspiration, where I said, okay, this game has a hex board, and they use cards to move around that hex board, and you build your deck by just mashing up the decks together. And how can I kind of build on the shoulders of giants, use experience that I've built playing other games to deconstruct those and then build them into something brand new. In a lot of ways, I've found that game design is like opening up 8 different Lego kits, dumping them on the floor, and then building something completely new and unexpected out of those kits using parts from here and there. You just you learn from all of the other games you've played, and you deconstruct them and find what you like. Uh, Leave out the parts that don't fit the goals that you're going for, and build something completely new.
Nice. Yeah, so it's I got the box here. So it's two to four players, so you can
Hmm.
do one versus one person, or you can team up and do a two people versus two people. Um, I've played it both ways. I've played probably 10 or 11 games of just me versus one other person, so we each have three characters, and then I've probably done three or four team games.
Hmm.
They both feel super similar, but also distinct because with a team game, yeah, you can communicate, but it's still not quite the same. You're like, okay, if you do this, then I can do this, but it's hard. At least for me, it was hard to not go into like that alpha gamer mode of like, hey, you do this and then this.
Pilot,
Um,
co-pilot.
but even yeah, but even then, it's like it still had that feel of okay, we can look at each other's cards, we can kind of converse without the other
Yeah.
people hearing us, but it threw in some different variables that make it feel like its own thing with the team game.
The thing I
It
love
feels a
most
lot
about the
tighter too with all of the characters out there.
Yeah, the thing I love about the team game is that there's so many characters on the board at once, and I mean, it goes from 6 characters up to 8 when you do the team game. So it's not that many more characters, but there's so much more chaos happening. There's so many things that happen in between Mickey's first and second turn that the planning doesn't go quite out the window, but you have to be a little more accepting that your plan might go sideways fast. And you just go in there and you brawl because like knockouts are kind of the name of the game.
So it comes with the eight starting characters for
Yep.
anybody that hasn't played or anything like that. There's Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, Gaston, Maleficent, Aladdin, Ariel, Dr. Facilier, Demona, and Solly. How did you guys kind of land on those characters for the core set, especially Demona? I was super excited to see a Gargoyles character in there.
Yeah.
Like that had just I saw that and that just hit like a nostalgia memory for me, and I went
Yeah.
and watched. I binged Gargoyles after that.
So we knew that we had a massive roster of characters that we could use because the license is signed with the mobile game project. We were able to use any character that already existed in the mobile game, um, and that gave us some great art resources. I got to give a ton of credit to the Disney Interactive team that did all of the art and styling for that game because the assets they've loaned to us for this project are absolutely incredible. But we knew that there was a monstrous roster. There were about 130 characters when we first started, and they ran the gamut from Disney and Pixar heroes and villains to live action characters, uh, to Saturday morning cartoons. Um, so we wanted to make sure that our core 8 represented that breadth of opportunity there. And we made sure we had a Disney character or two, and we had a Pixar character in there, and we got Demona in there to represent the Saturday morning cartoons. Um, the funny thing is, my initial 8 didn't actually include Mickey. I
Hmm.
forgot to put Mickey in the initial roster of 8. And when I presented it to Disney, they said, "This is great. We love these characters, except you forgot somebody." I was like,
You
"What?"
forgot our boy Mickey.
Um, you got to have the mouse. Oh, yeah. Yeah, oops. Uh, so, so we took a character out, and he's on the shelf. He's waiting for an opportunity to someday maybe come back into the game. I can't tell you who it is. Um, but Mickey came in. One other character eventually dropped out to make room for a different character that was brought in. So that character went off to the bench to wait for a new opportunity. But really, the thing that excites me about a character like Demona is that it's a show of sort of hope for people that like those characters that don't get enough love in other games. There's an opportunity that someday you're going to get to see character X, Y, and Z that only showed up in that one story, but like they're in the mobile game, so maybe we'll get to use them.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that there's definitely a value in giving players who like those corner case characters um, a little bit of love here and there.
Hmm. So was it hard to kind of go through and look at the different, I guess, franchises within Disney and Pixar and only pick one character from that? Like, how did you decide on Aladdin versus the Genie?
It's tough. There are definitely franchises where I look at them and go, "Oh man, I could use 3 or 4 characters from this franchise and get them all in there, and they'd be fun." But what it comes down to really is the balance of the game. Aladdin made it in because we didn't have a rogue style character in the game, so Aladdin's a perfect rogue character. He's a thief. He can mess with your opponent's hand. It fits his story. Um, Sully is there because we needed a tank. Gaston is there because we needed a bruiser fighter. Um, every character in the core set kind of fits an archetypal role, and we wanted to make sure that we covered our bases in that regard.
Nice. Yeah, for just my suggestions for any future characters, I would love to see Hades from Hercules,
Okay,
Syndrome from The Incredibles, Baymax from Big Hero 6, and then Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck,
Whenever I,
everyone asks for. He's a very popular
yes,
character. When
whenever I,
we ran our tournament at Gen Con, uh, and 4 different people, independent of each other, all came up and said, "When's Darkwing? When do I get
yeah,
Darkwing Duck?" So yeah, he's definitely high on the list of characters we're going to have to think about finding a space for in the game.
nice. Yeah, so we've got I'm doing the expansion, the demo for it on Sunday, and it's the Turning the Tides, and that added Moana, Davy Jones, and Stitch. So what was kind of the thought process with releasing these three at the same time? How are they all related or
So they're all
play into the
oceanic.
core?
Turning the Tide is clearly a reference to them being oceanic characters. Stitch was sort of a slam dunk. He's a very popular character. We've done projects with Lilo and Stitch in the office before that did very well for us. Moana, just a really compelling character from a recent movie, so she's still fresh in people's minds. And Davy Jones, the exciting thing there was that he represents a live action film. I mean, he's clearly a CG animated character, but he comes from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which is not a cartoon. And to be able to kind of get that mix of Stitch being a classic animation, Moana being a modern CG animation, and Davy Jones being effectively live action, was a really interesting trio to hit all those beats. And then we knew with Moana, she was going to present us with the opportunity to start going down the princess road. So you might expect some princess characters down the line. The oceanic theme, there are other oceanic characters in the mobile game, so that mechanic with the ocean tiles helping out other oceanic characters kind of gives us a platform to build other character types on. Um,
Which it even helps with the core game because of
yeah,
Ariel too.
Ariel.
So it
Ariel is both a
integrates into the
princess
core
and
game, and
oceanic.
then
Yeah.
yeah, it integrates into the core game, and then it gives you guys a ton of options
Well, and then
too for future.
you've got other synergies where Davy Jones is all about cursing his crew, and it just so happens that Doctor Facilier doesn't mind cursing people here and there. So you've got
Hmm.
synergies built in. Mickey is a great partner with Davy Jones because Mickey wants to find more magical cards to beef up his attacks and skills. So Davy Jones has a ton of magical cards in his deck, and you can kind of build that strategy synergy there as well.
Yeah, I was at Gen Con this year, and I immediately
Ah,
ran to the booth and got the Thrills and Chills expansion too. When is this expected for retail? I couldn't find a specific date yet.
we're anticipating that late September, early October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
this one
sorry I didn't get to meet
adds.
you there. Or did we?
Uh,
I met so many
I
people at Gen Con this year.
I don't think so. I didn't know that you were going to be there.
Yeah, I was working the booth doing demos and meeting a lot of people playing Sorcerer's Arena for the first time.
Oh, it's great. We did. I introduced my buddy to it at Origins. We went to Origins together,
Oh, cool.
and we sat down and played. And it was one of those games. We had two, overtime rounds essentially because we ended the round and we were both over
I
20, but we were
Yep.
tied. And he ended up beating me by one.
Oh,
I think we were doing. Yeah, we were doing the Turning the Tide expansion. It was the demo for it as well. Because I think I had Stitch and he had Moana.
yep.
And he did something with the ocean tiles that let him get an additional space closer to me that he needed to be able to damage me.
hmm And Moana's got that one card that deals damage equal to the number of spaces you've moved. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen her unload like 8 points of damage in one turn and just completely wipe somebody off the board in one hit.
Yeah. So the Thrills and Chills, it add the Horned King,
hmm
Jack Skellington, and Mother Gothel. So, admittedly, the Horned King I know nothing about. When I saw that, I was like, "Who is this person?" So, how did you guys go about kind of coming up with those characters as a team and
So
pulling back from the archives with
Horned
them?
King was another one, sort of like Demona, where we knew it was a deep cut from the album. Um, Not everyone's going to know the Horned King. I remember the Horned King because I grew up, born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and I remember seeing the Black Cauldron and being absolutely terrified by it. It traumatized me. Um, but he's a scary necromancer character, and knowing that he's kind of a cult favorite among the 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 horror movie crowd, um, I wanted to bring him in again, just like Demona, to show we're not afraid to go with some obscure characters if they make for some really interesting gameplay. And I don't know if you've played him yet, but man, that
Hmm.
necromancer theme where he's dropping zombies onto the Cauldron Born onto the
Yeah.
board and using them to attack and just commanding an army of skeleton warriors. Uh, it was a lot of fun to design that character, and I was glad that he was there in the roster for us to use. Jack Skellington, no brainer, had to go with that one because he's so popular. And he's another one of those characters that gets us outside the realm of your traditional Disney and Pixar. He's from Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, which was sort of a stop motion animation style. And
Hmm.
then Mother Gothel is one of my favorites just because she's so twisted. If you've seen Tangled, she is awful, and she gaslights Rapunzel from the start of the movie to the very end. And the thing I liked about her, constructing her as a playable character, was that she can go in there and force your opponent to make decisions. Uh, Choose this or choose that, and both of them are bad for you. So she's sort
Hmm.
of a pick your poison character. And when we looked at the theme of thrills and chills, like, to me that is really scary stuff. That's a psychologically terrifying character, and she fit the bill.
Hmm. So they all the expansions have came out relatively quick so far.
hmm
I feel like the core game hasn't been released that long yet. The Turning the Tides, it feels like it was 2 months maybe after the core game,
If
and now
that,
Thrills
yeah,
and
they
Chills.
were right on the heels of each other, and the goal there was to really prove that we are supporting this game with expansions, and we want this game to grow. So to kind of reinforce and make the promise to the audience, the players, um, we made sure that that first expansion was timed to be right there with the core set.
Nice. Can we expect a third expansion
You can
anytime
expect like
soon, or anything?
a fourth and fifth expansion anytime.
Nice.
Yeah, we've got our playtesting lineup right now. We're working on expansion 5, and we've got plans for well beyond that.
Nice. So with that growing roster, is there any plans for any type of like one storage box, like just kind of a not a big box that includes everything, but just a some sort of storage that you could purchase separately and
Nothing
just
I
have
can
all
speak
your
to
characters,
officially yet.
cards, tokens?
Nothing I can speak to officially yet. But we have seen some. We've seen some really innovative storage solutions that players have come up with on their own, and there's definitely inspiration we can glean from that, and look at the way people prefer to store their game, and how they like to organize their game, so that if we do look at releasing a product for storage, um, again, there's some great inspiration out there for us to look to, for how to offer something that really serves the function well.
Nice. Yeah, and one of the other things, what did I do with them? Here they are. So, kind of going on the components there too, I received these today
Yeah.
from the op for the demo that I'm doing on Sunday at the boardroom. So, anybody that comes out and plays, I believe it was 8 packs of these. So, we'll see how we need to distribute those, but you'll be able to get nice foils. Everybody loves a sexy foil. I was looking through these, and I'm pretty sure either Demona or Dr. Facilier have to be my two favorite ones. They just look excellent with the foils.
Yeah, the rocket launcher looks fantastic. And the friends on the other side, just getting that shine behind all the magic swirling around him, looks great.
So outside of the op, kind of moving into more general board game stuff. Outside of the op, is there any publisher that really excites you, or as soon as you see one of their products come out, it's almost like a add to cart instantly type thing, or
Not necessarily an add to cart instantly, but I love what Stonemeyer Games and Jamie Stagmeyer have done for just sort of an awareness and behind the scenes look at how the gaming business works. I think they've got some fantastic games in their lineup, and I think that I mean Jamie's literally written the book on kickstarting uh,
hmm
board games, and how to reach out to a community and build a community. And I have a lot of admiration for what Stonemeyer has done. Um, I mean, they launch a Kickstarter and bingo, they're in. Like,
hmm
there's no concern right away. It's going to be a good product, and it's going to get funded in the first 10 minutes, just because they've got that following and they've got that rapport built with their community. They do a great job of working with their community. Other studios that I've been going to a lot. AEG, and I'm a little biased there because I worked on the two licensed Smash Up games. I worked with Paul Peterson on both the Marvel and Disney Smash
Oh,
Ups.
nice.
Um, but they've got some great stuff. I mean, Cascadia just
hmm
won the Spiel des Jahres, and they've got so many other great games that have been coming out. I always like to keep an eye on Ravensburger, just because I've got friends that work there. They're Seattle based as well, so when I was up in Seattle, they were one of the other studios right across town, and everyone gets to know everybody. So yeah, there's a few out there that I keep my eye on. I tend to be a sort of a mid range hobby gamer, largely because my wife, I want to be able to sit down and play a game with her, and we don't have the time to learn, an 8 hour game. We're not going to sit down for Twilight Imperium 4, especially with a 7-year old. We're just we don't have the time for it. But
Yeah.
if there's a great mid-range hobby game that we can play in an hour, hour and a half, like that's our jam.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely Stonemeyer. It's an instant buy for me. It automatically notify me on launch on pre-order as
Hmm.
soon as I get that notification. Pre-order. It was December, and my wife and I we had a miscarriage,
I'm
and
sorry to hear
my
that.
buddy had came in. Thank you. My buddy had came in from North Carolina, and I live in Ohio. And he came in, and we just played games. It was
Hmm.
one of those to keep my mind off of it. That's kind of how why I started the group and everything. And I've been using board games to help with my mental health and
Yeah,
the struggles that I've had with it. And he came in, and we played Scythe and Wingspan and all kinds of stuff. And I just shot Jamie an email and I said, "Hey, thanks for making a great game. This is what happened. This is kind of, you know, what you created kind of help alleviate a little bit of the stress and everything else that I was feeling. So just thank you." And he was like, "Oh man," he was like, "I love to hear that. Obviously I'm sorry with what happened. I'd like to send your buddy a game of his choice for him, willing to come up to a few states away to kind of help you with that. Like, tell him to pick a game out and I'll send it to him." And I was like, "Man, that's awesome." Like, I was just trying to say like, "Hey, thanks for making this great product." And he even was like, "Hey, let's,
give back.
kind of reward your buddy
Yeah.
for being a good person and stuff." And he's donated some games to Lincoln County High School in West Virginia. I've done some board game events with them for some after school programs. He just recently he had I was watching one of his weekly live casts he does on Facebook, and somebody asked him about calling games and stuff like how do you just narrow down your collection. And he's like, "Well, if I have games that don't fit on my shelves, I try to donate them, give them to friends, whatever." He's like, "I've got a stack that I'm trying to get rid of now to find a home for them. I've asked some libraries, they don't have the capacity for it." He's like, "So I don't know what to do." So I shot him an email and I was like, "Hey, I do stuff over at the center. It's a drop-in shelter for at-risk youth, age 16, 24. If you want to donate your games there, I'd gladly pay for shipping. That way you don't have to cover shipping costs or anything, and it'd be great." He got back and he's like, "Absolutely." He's
Oh,
like,
that's
"Give me the
fantastic.
address. They're on their way." And I was like, "Okay, like, tell me how much shipping is." And his response was, "I'll take care of shipping. You take care of the kids."
Oh, wow, that's great.
And it was just one of those. So I'm a Stonemeyer ambassador.
Oh, yeah.
Signed up with their program and stuff, but just the quality of the games, the quality of the people that work there, just everything about them has just blown me away. Scythe was actually the first modern board game that I got into, so it's going to stay my number one.
That was my first Gen Con purchase at the first Gen Con I went to in 2016. And then my little scythe has kind of gotten my kid hooked on minis painting.
Mhm.
So we've got a row of them on the shelf, and you can tell which ones my wife and I painted. We both went to art school, so we art school adults, 7-year old, but we're proud of his collection too, and he's learning, and he's painted all of the My Little Scythe figures and moved on to whatever other minis he can find.
Nice. So, what would be what do you consider at this point in time your top 5 games right now that you would
Top
want to
five games.
play? Somebody ask you to play them. Yep, absolutely.
Number one is always Magic. It's always going to be Magic. It's been Magic for almost 30 years now, and I just don't see that one changing anytime soon. And I think it's the fact that it does evolve, so it's always something familiar, but also something new. And there's just so many ways to play it. So that's always number one. Uh, 2 through 5 in no particular order. I'm going to put Orleans in there. Orleans. I love that it uses the bag building, but also sort of an engine building mechanic, and I love how they fit together, and it's got kind of that secondary board where you're moving around the map and building your network and collecting the resources there. I just really enjoy that game. Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is absolutely near the top of those five. I've only ever actually played it solo. I've never been able to get a group together all at the same time. It's like the
Mm,
you know the meme about the D&D group. Like you can get four of your five players at the table at once. Spin the spinner and find out who's not going to be there this week. So I decided I was just going to play Gloomhaven solo, and it's been amazing. I've got hundreds of hours logged in that game. That and Jaws of the Lion. We'll count the two of them as one. What else? Um, Lately, we've been getting a lot of mileage out of Tiny Towns by
mm.
AEG. My son likes to play that with us. So that's been a lot of fun. You need That's three. You need one more,
Yeah, one or two, whatever,
one or two more.
whatever kind of pops off of your head.
I'm honestly having a hard time. I've got a Kallax full of games plus another stash of games in the garage. But life gets so busy. I mentioned Scouts earlier, and he's got school, and we've got other weekend responsibilities that take up time. And I don't get to game nearly as much as I'd like to.
Yeah,
And I'll the dirty little secret of being a game designer full time is that you don't get to spend as much time at work gaming as you might expect you would, because a lot of it is filled with things like proofreading and spreadsheets and like there's it's a day job. Like there's
you're like, this
definitely
isn't what I signed up for.
It's absolutely what I signed up for, but not all of it is as glamorous as the press your face against the glass on the outside and look in, and you'd be surprised to see how much of it is just spreadsheets.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know that I have a fourth one to throw in there off the top of my head. I should have made my list ahead of time, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think right now mine's definitely Scythe. I've played a ton of Australia the last few, probably 2 months from Stronghold Games. I've played a ton of Copenhagen on BGA
Hmm.
from Queen Games. I've got over 120 plays of it within a month and a half. Parks, that's been
Hmm.
one that I can actually get my wife to play. She's not into board
We
games at all,
introduced
but
that one to
she'll
my
at least
in-laws,
play that
and
one with
they
me.
loved it. They really enjoyed Parks.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
and
gonna borrow
then
your Scythe call there. I don't know how I
okay,
forgot about Scythe. If you
oh yeah,
haven't played through Rise of Fenris, man,
oh yes,
that is a fun campaign.
yeah. Me and a buddy, we had to go to training. We got hired on at the same place, and we had to go to Baltimore for 6 weeks for training. We brought that with us. We knocked it out in a weekend.
Yeah, yeah. My wife and I played it in the span of maybe 4 nights. Right after she got it for me for
Yeah,
Christmas a year or two ago, and my son would see us pull the box out, and I want to play. No, no, this is
yeah,
mommy and daddy game. This is You don't get to take these pieces out of those boxes yet.
yeah. All right, so let's kind of wrap it up
Sure.
here. Is there any plugs that you want to do? Where can people find more about you, about any of the other products you've worked on, anything that the op's working on right now?
The op.
I
Yeah,
had to catch myself. I've
that's
said the
okay.
OP forever.
We actually had a TikTok go up the other day
Yep.
about this is how you pronounce it. It's
Yeah, my buddy sent it to me, and he's like,
it's
"See, I told you." And I was like, "I have to. It's got the blue check mark. I have to
Yeah,
admit defeat."
yeah. No, we had people walking into our booth at Gen Con going, "Oh, I love the OP games. Glad you like the OP games. The op makes great games." Um, yeah, so the op.games is our website. You can find out about all the stuff that we're doing there. Specifically, the op.games /DSA is our landing page for Disney Sorcerer's Arena, where we've got all kinds of resources for learning the game. We've got some FAQs up there. We've got plans for some more features to go on that site down the line. What else? You can find me on Twitter at Boy, I wish I could remember my Twitter handle. Uh, Game Maker Fletch. So all one word, no spaces. Game Maker Fletch. And you'd also want to follow, if you're going to follow me on Twitter, you absolutely want to follow the Op Games on Twitter, um, because there's always new stuff coming out there. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thanks
This
for
has been
hosting.
my first interview that I've done. This has been like, the first video content that I've put out on the page. I've been kind of focusing more on community events,
Yeah.
but I want to kind of get into more of the content creation side of it as well, just to let people see other things.
Oh
I
yeah.
want to do some playthroughs, some reviews, typical content creator dreams type stuff. But I'm super excited to be able to talk to a designer of a game that I'm about to go demo. So I really appreciate you taking the time out this evening to do that.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So upcoming events for Blue Falcon Board Gaming, we've got this Sunday, August 28th. We're doing the Disney Sorcerer Arena Epic Alliances with the Turning the Tide expansion, and I may bring Thrills and Chills just so people to look at, just to kind of get a preview of that as well. That's going to be 1 through 6, or I'm sorry, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. At the boardroom in South Charleston. Saturday, September 3rd, I've got an event with the Briggs Lawrence County Public Library at the Ironton branch. We're doing a board game day there, 11 to 4. The following Saturday, September 10th, I'm doing something at the Cabell County Public Library at their main branch. That's going to be 12 to 4. And then Sunday, September 25th, 12 to 2, we've got the board game brunch again with Cicada Books and Coffee. So we've got a nice little, gaming store, 2 different public libraries, and then a local bookstore. So we're trying to reach out into the community, make as many events as accessible to people in the community. And the goals with the library is to show enough interest from the community for them to actually get stuff in stock and circulation. The Cabell County Library just recently got their circulation going, but Briggs is still needing some numbers to convince their board and everything to approve their purchase of
It's
things.
so great to see public libraries really starting to embrace board games as a media that they can bring to the public.
Hmm.
I was just up in Connecticut last weekend for a family function, and it turns out that Jen Bartlett, the board game librarian, works at the library I grew up going to as a kid. So I stopped in there and saw the
Yeah,
collection that the Manchester Public Libraries has built and that Jen has fostered for them. It's amazing to see what can be brought to people through public libraries.
absolutely. Well, thank you again, Fletch. I really appreciate this,
Thank you
and
for
I
thank
hope
you
you
for
get,
having me on.
yeah, and I hope everyone enjoyed the conversations.
All right.